October 14th, 1077. The dense forest of Goslar, Germany, hums with the quiet rustle of autumn leaves, their amber and crimson hues painting the earth in a fleeting tapestry of warmth. Through the ancient oaks and towering pines, a solitary figure moves with purpose. Her steps are firm, her posture regal, draped in a cloak adorned with silver embroidery that catches the fading sunlight. She is Adelaide of Turin, wife of Emperor Henry IV, a woman whose beauty and intellect have made her both admired and feared. Her piercing eyes, sharp as the blade she carries for protection, miss nothing yet. She is unaware of the shadows closing in around her. Adelaide, born around 1045, is no ordinary consort. Daughter of Odo, Count of Savoy, and granddaughter of the powerful Manfredi dynasty, she was raised in a world of political maneuvering and ambition. Her marriage to Henry IV, Holy Roman Emperor, was meant to cement alliances, but it has instead thrust her into a maelstrom of betrayal and rebellion. As she rides through Goslar's forest this autumn day, accompanied by a small retinue of loyal guards, she believes she is safe. But the trees conceal a deadly secret, a plot woven in whispers, fueled by resentment and sharpened by ambition. Within moments, the stillness of the forest will shatter. The clash of steel and the cries of men will echo through the trees, marking one of the most audacious betrayals in medieval history. What happens to Adelaide's body in the aftermath will cast a shadow of horror over an already tragic tale, leaving a legacy that haunts the annals of time. The making of a queen. To understand Adelaide's fate, we must step back to her origins. Born into the influential House of Savoy, Adelaide was no stranger to power. Her father Odo and her mother Adelaide of Susa were key players in the Alpine courts, their lineage tied to the rulers of Italy and Burgundy. Her sisters, too, were pieces in the chessboard of European politics. Bertha married Henry IV before Adelaide, and another sister, Ermengarde, became the wife of the Duke of Swabia. From a young age, Adelaide was groomed for greatness, her sharp mind honed by tutors and her will tempered by the intrigues of court. In 1066, at the age of 21, Adelaide married Henry IV, a union orchestrated to strengthen ties between the Holy Roman Empire and the Savoyards. But the marriage was fraught from the start. Henry, embroiled in the investiture controversy with Pope Gregory VII, was a man under siege, his throne contested by rebellious German princes. Adelaide, fiercely independent and unafraid to wield influence, became a polarizing figure. She openly supported her husband's claim to appoint bishops, a stance that earned her enemies among the clergy and nobility alike, a queen's ambition. When Henry was excommunicated in 1076, Adelaide's role grew even more critical. As her husband fought to maintain his grip on the empire, she took on the mantle of regent during his absences, governing with a decisiveness that stunned her contemporaries. Chronicler Lambert of Hersfeld described her as a woman who ruled with the resolve of a king, a compliment laced with unease, in an era when women were expected to remain in the shadows of power. Adelaide's greatest misstep, however, was her favoritism toward her Savoyard kin. She granted titles, lands, and privileges to her relatives, appointing her cousin Amadeus as governor of key territories in the empire. To the German nobles already bristling under Henry's rule, this was an unforgivable affront. They saw Adelaide not as a queen, but as a foreign usurper, draining the empire's wealth to enrich her own bloodline. Whispers of discontent grew into a roar, and by 1077, a coalition of nobles led by the cunning Rudolf of Rheinfelden had had enough. The trap in the forest. The opportunity came in October 1077 when Henry IV departed for a campaign to quell a rebellion in Swabia. Adelaide, left to oversee the court in Goslar, decided to hunt in the nearby forest, at a pastime she loved for its solitude and freedom. Accompanied by her trusted guards and a distant cousin, Otto of Nordheim, she rode into the woods, unaware that her enemies had been tracking her movements for weeks. The details of the ambush are shrouded in conflicting accounts, but the outcome is clear. As Adelaide's party paused by a clearing, the conspirators struck. Arrows flew from the trees, felling her guards in moments. Swords gleamed as the attackers closed in their faces, twisted with rage. Adelaide fought back, her dagger drawn, but she was no match for the overwhelming force. In a matter of minutes, the queen lay dead, her blood soaking the forest floor. Otto of Nordheim, wounded but alive, fled to tell the tale. A macabre legacy. What followed is where history blurs into nightmare. According to later accounts, the conspirators, driven by their loathing for the foreign queen, did not merely kill Adelaide, they desecrated her body. In a gruesome act of vengeance, they are said to have left her corpse exposed in the forest, where wolves, creatures reviled as symbols of chaos in medieval lore. or tore at her remains. This tale, though unverified by contemporary sources, became a chilling legend, symbolizing the ultimate rejection of Adelaide's authority and humanity. In a Christian world that revered the sanctity of the body for resurrection, such an act was not just violence, but a spiritual annihilation. Official records, however, state that Adelaide's body was recovered and buried in the Abbey of St. Maria in Goslar. If any desecration occurred, it was likely suppressed to avoid further inflaming Henry IV's wrath. When the emperor returned and learned of his wife's murder, his grief was matched only by his fury. He launched a brutal campaign against the conspirators, but curiously some escaped with light punishment, a fact that has led historians to wonder if Henry, weary of Adelaide's growing influence, might have quietly welcomed her removal. A lasting echo, Adelaide's death sent shockwaves across Europe. Regicide, even of a consort, was a crime against the divine order, and the brutality of her end only amplified the scandal. She left behind two children, Agnes and Conrad, who would carve their own paths in history. Conrad as a claimant to the imperial throne, and Agnes as a key figure in the courts of Italy. Centuries later, Adelaide's story found new life in art. In 1824, German poet Friedrich de la Motte Fouquet penned Die Kaiserin von Goslar, a dramatic retelling of her life and death. In the play, Adelaide is depicted as a tragic figure torn between her love for Henry and her ambition to reshape the empire. Her assassination becomes a symbol of resistance against foreign influence, a narrative that resonated during the rise of German nationalism. In 1870, composer Wilhelm Tauber adapted the story into an opera, cementing Adelaide's place in cultural memory as both victim and villain. A timeless warning today, the Goslar forest stands quiet, its paths winding past the ruins of St. Maria's Abbey, where Adelaide was laid to rest. The silence belies the violence that unfolded there nearly a millennium ago. Adelaide of Turin's story endures because it speaks to universal truths: the peril of power wielded without empathy, the resentment of those who feel displaced, and the fragility of even the mightiest in the face of betrayal. Her assassination on October 14, 1077, was more than a murder. It was a clash of cultures, ambitions, and loyalties that reshaped the Holy Roman Empire. Whether her body was truly left to the wolves or quietly buried, the legend of her end lingers as a haunting reminder of the cost of defying the expectations of one's time. In the end, Adelaide's greatest crime may have been her refusal to be invisible, a choice that made her both a queen and a target, immortalized in blood and story. And so ends the haunting tale of Adelaide of Turin, a woman of strength, vision, and unrelenting courage, who dared to lead in a world not ready for her voice. Her life was a storm of ambition and resistance, and her death a brutal reminder of the dangers that come with standing too tall in the shadows of men. As the winds still whisper through the trees of Goslar, one truth remains: her story did not end in silence. It became legend. Adelaide's story teaches us that true power does not come from a throne, a crown, or titles. It comes from the courage to speak, to lead, and to defy the roles the world assigns us. But courage comes with a cost. She reminds us that those who challenge the status quo will often be punished not for their failures, but for their brilliance. And yet history remembers them not as victims, but as voices that refuse to be erased. So the lesson is clear: do not fear the fight when your purpose is just. Even if the world turns against you, your courage can outlive your enemies, just like Adelaide's did.